Welcome! I promised you that I would give you the 6 secrets of designing. There are actually more than 6 secrets, but this DVD is just going to show you 6 of them. Remember these 6, they're going to help you in all your designing from now on. They're called principles. Now, some countries they have 21 of these principles, and other countries they only have 8. But for this DVD we're going to explore those 6. To start with, our first design is going to be the principle of contrast. Now you've seen what I've been picking outside, and I've come in with what I finally decided is going to work for this arrangement. I was first of all looking for the contrast of form. Form means it's a three-dimensional shape of something. So let's have a look and see what I've got here. The first is a linear form. This is New Zealand flax. It's a very small one. And it's a linear form, meaning it's long and thin and makes lovely lines. The second form I have got is a little round, what I call busy form. This is a coprosma. The third one I've got is this glorious knobbly fig tree branches that you saw me cutting down. Once again, it's a linear form because it will create a line. Can you see, however, we're talking about contrast, and here there is a contrast between knobbly and brown and shiny and smooth. So that would be your first contrast you're looking at, is dull, shiny, texturally busy, texturally smooth. Have a look at this one here. This is Nandina. Nandina is going to give me a colour contrast. I have picked it so it has the same colour as these flax bushes here because we don't want them to be, don't want too many contrasts. So it has got a bit of unity there with the colour, but there is a contrast once again of form. We've got linear again, and we've got more busy. And the final thing I've got to use for this design is this geranium. Once again a contrast of form. We haven't got this form before. Also of colour, but also shiny, coprosma, dull geranium. However, something that has to be clear is the word unity, which I've just said to you was a principle. Unity means when you put them all together, they go. So before I even start this design, you're going to say, if I put these all together, will they look good together? So, to test yourself, you take this one and that one. Yep, they look good together. A wee bit dull though, you must admit. So let's add some colour. Looking a bit more cheerful now. And then let's add a little bit of the Nandina. Do they look good together? I think they do. So before you've even started even thinking about your design, you've got yourself the contrasts, but when they put together, they look unified and they work. So there you are. That's your first one, is contrast. Now to start this design, we are going to have a big, beautiful, knobbly centerpiece for a coffee table. And this is where the word scale comes in, because scale is about how big do I want to make this design for where it's going, and therefore how big the plant material is going to be. I want this for my coffee table, so what I've done, I've got an old cardboard box, and on it I drew a circle. And that circle is going to give me a guide to how big I want my design to be, because it's going to be a wooden wreathy thing. So here, that's going to give me my guide to the scale I want it for the space it's going to be in. Then I'm going to take this glorious fig, and if you look at it immediately you'll say it's out of scale. That means it's too big for the place I want to put it. Therefore I have to bring its scale down, and for that we use the great big yummies and cut it. I'm cutting it. That's what you need. You need good equipment when you're using fig trees. Now when I put it there around my ring, suddenly it's looking as if it's more in scale. It is a better size for where it's going to go. So I'm going to do this with a hot glue gun. I'm going to connect all these up, and I'm going to put every now and again a little flower tube. The flower tube is going to be glued in to all of this so that I can use it again and again and again with fresh flowers. The flowers I've picked here are winter flowers that actually will last very well out of water. The Nandina will last for 3, 4, 5 months with no water. The Flax will probably a week. The Caprosma, a couple of weeks. The geranium, if you use really big strong pieces of geranium, will last a week. But I'm going to put some of them in water as I build this up. So I'm going to do it very, very fast by speeding up the camera so you can see how I am simply hot gluing these all the way around here on my template. I'll catch you when I'm finished. Now that that's finished, I'm going to show you how to make some flax rolls. This is a little bit of flax you saw in the garden growing. Start at the top and go round with your, obviously round your fingers like that till it gets a bit hard there. Now you need to get a stapler that is small, a little tiny office stapler. They sell to school kids is good because you've got to get the head of that stapler in there. Staple it so the staple is hidden, and that is your flax roll. Easy as that. Now I have made 8 of those rolls for later, but just let's have a look back at this construction now it's finished. I've tried as much as I can to make the glass files more discreet by putting other pieces on top of them. I have also just quietly gone around and checked that any of these little glue trails have been pulled off. This has now been finished for half an hour just to allow the glue to set, so it should be easy enough for you then to pick up like this and transport it to the coffee table where you want to go. At the moment there's no contrast here. We've got all these lovely big knobbly bits but no contrast. So we're going to put in an accent. An accent is something that you look out at that you notice, and a contrast is a very good idea, using a completely different colour, a completely different form, and in this case I'm going to use the Nandina leaves. First of all, just have a look what they do. As soon as you put them on, your eye goes straight there. It lifts the design up, it gives it some colour. You've got the contrast of the knobbly and the dull with the shiny and the bright red. So once again with the glue gun, I'm simply going to go around and glue these leaves on. These don't have to be in water because they are dry and they will last for months and months and months. You can also use the Nandina leaves to cover up the files. Glass files are perfectly acceptable to be seen, but if you don't like them, just use the Nandina leaves. And all I'm doing is placing them right the way around evenly, well, sort of evenly, just to give a spot of colour around the outside rim. Wonderful things. A couple of years ago I used Nandina leaves for a wall hanging and it lasted 3 years and the colour never faded. Obviously I didn't have the wall hanging in the sun. Okay, so there they are done. Okay, let's talk about proportion while I'm here. I have done 13 of those leaves. You'll think, what a strange number, 13, but I'm using what's called the Fibonacci numbers, and Fibonacci numbers start at 1, then they go 2, 3, 5, 8, 13. And so if you use those numbers, you get a nice proportion. Nothing dominates and everything just works in very well together. So that is my 13 little accents. I have now got 8 of the rolled up pieces of flax, and I'll be using 5 of the geranium leaves. So that's the Fibonacci proportions. Before we get to that, we need to fill up these test tubes with water. The best thing to use is a needle. These are used in New Zealand for drenching sheep and cattle and horses, and they are available from the local vets. Wherever you are, just go along and see the vet at your local clinic or somewhere. Tell them what you want it for, so they don't think you're doing anything really strange, and there you have it, an ideal syringe for filling flower tubes wherever you have put them. So you suck up the water and in it goes. Fill them all up with water and you're done. Next thing, we put on these. These, once again, the form for contrast is a different form. They are round. All these are rhythmically placed this way, but for unity I've picked the flax that has got the same browny colour as the fig and a little bit of a red tinge in it to go with the Nandina leaves. They've all been stapled and into they go into the test tubes, and just placing them into the test tubes around the edge. Not nearly as strong a contrast as the Nandina leaves, but giving your eye, just something else to have a look at, a contrast of texture to make it more interesting, so that when the person is sitting at my coffee table talking to me and conversation is a little bit slow for a minute, we can admire this arrangement and talk about it. And there we are. How many have we got there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. One more. And we'll pop it in there. So we're now getting some interesting shapes of contrast. But we probably need to also have a colour contrast. Colour contrast, the strongest one you can get is red and green. They're called complementary colours, and when you look at them, they are opposite each other on the colour wheel, and because of that, when you put them together, they vibrate. So if I now add green to this design, you will see it will bring it up even more. So I've selected 5 geranium leaves, and into they go, into the test tubes. Take off the wee bits of glue that are still there. And in they go. sometimes you've hidden them so well it's quite hard to find them. Right, and so there are the 5 geranium leaves. Now I've decided to leave out the coprosma that I was showing you before. I don't think it needs it. And to finish off, I have covered this candle with Nandina leaves as well. They're simply glued onto the candle, and that is being put there into the middle. Why did I do that? For unity. Now the red Nandina accents here are again repeated on here, so it's putting it all together. Also, when I light that, it will glow and it will be reflected in all these beautiful things around there. And so there it is. Have a go. It is your arrangement when there's hardly anything in the garden in early winter and you are trying to give yourselves a study on contrast. Are you ready for the next one? This time we're going to focus on rhythm. Remember though, with all of these design secrets, these 6 principles, they don't work alone. You have to actually think about them all as you are doing all your designs. Sometimes you'll use a lot, sometimes you won't, but they're always there. Now I'm going to start this segment with a very strange thing. I'm going to show you an incredibly old design. It's actually 2 years old, but it is a superb example of what I mean by rhythm. Rhythm. Never been able to spell it, at least I can say it. Rhythm is about making your design dance. If you're watching a floral designer at an exhibition, you'll see they use their hands a lot. And if a design is a really, really good design, they will be going like this or like this. And it's always quite funny. What they're actually doing is using their hands to emulate the rhythm. Have a look at this piece here. There's the rhythm. Can you see how it's like a giant crashing wave, and it starts here and it goes around and down and fades out down the bottom there. That is rhythm. Rhythm is movement. Being able to create movement with a static piece of plant material. Just before we leave this one, just so you know how it was done, it's a wire netting, and through the wire netting was threaded beer grass. This is part of a workshop that I did with the European designer, and we threaded it through there, and then we just bent it over into the shape we wanted with the beer grass, which at that stage was green. Added the test tubes and added something into the middle here. But enough about that design, but it's lovely if you want to have a try with it for your rhythm. We'll pop that to one side. Now we'll get on with what we're going to do today. You're going to start with a plain tall vase. We'll go through the mechanics first and then I'll get back into the theory for you. Onto the top of this vase, just a vase, onto the top of this vase I've cut a little plastic dish up so it fits as if it was made for it. This is actually, I went to the supermarket and found one that fitted it, and so there it is, just fits in there beautifully. Then I've cut a piece of floral foam, now you can hear it, it's not wet, and pop this inside it. If I do it when it's out of it, it won't fall down into the vase. So it's just sitting there like that, and pop it on. You'll discover why it's not wet in a minute. Now, usually at this stage you would put florist tape over the top of that to secure all this down, but I'm going to use sellotape. And so you can pop it over the top, down the sides, cut it off, and it virtually disappears. It's probably a wee bit generous with the length. But by doing this to it, it's really not going to be noticeable. You do the same thing the other way. And it's done. It's going to hold. It's in there. That's what you always test your mechanics. If you can do that with them, they're going to hold, they're not going to wobble. Okay. back to the theory. To create rhythm, you normally connect up a series of dots, which becomes a line. Well, the dots in this case are plant material. And the dots I'm going to use is a piece of papyrus. This papyrus is growing in my pond, but you could also use anything that's got a really lovely strong green stem. Agapanthus is another very, very good one. If the agapanthus were out, I would use that. And I'm going to chop it up. So there's my first dot. I know it's not a dot, I know it's a dash. And I'm going to cut the stems up all into the same length. Now I've got a heaps of them here, so I'm going to do it with all of this beautiful, beautiful papyrus. Right, when I've done it, I'll get back to you. Alright, so there miraculously is my pile of dashes. Not quite even, but I can even them up later. How did I decide on the length? Now the length is back to that scale word that we'll be looking at later. The length, I'm going to connect them up so they form a little mat. So I felt that that length was about right for that container. If you've got a shorter container, you might cut them shorter. If you've got a longer container, fatter container, you will know what size to cut them. Just look and go, what's going to look nice and the right length for that container. Now the technique I'm going to show you is called tatami wiring. It's a Japanese technique and it's what they used for their bed mats. And it's taken the world by the storm in the last 5 or so years as a way of connecting plant material up. To do it you need wire, being a wiring technique. One that's very popular to use is called paper wire, paper covered wire. Yes, this isn't string, it's paper covered wire. There's a piece of wire inside there. And that works very, very well. See, you can tell it's got wire because it folds like that. It comes in lots of colours. I've got beige and red. It comes in green, yellow, blue, all sorts of colours. But when I looked at my design, I went, no, nah, don't really want that. So I've gone to reel wire. It's much, much smaller. It comes on a reel. That's why it's called reel wire. And it's decorative wire that you use when you just want an accent. You just want to have a little bit of bling in there to make a contrast. You know that word now. Okay, so let's see what you do. You pull yourself out a length of wire, quite a long one, cut it up and fold it in half. Couldn't be easier than that, really, could it? And put the first one through there into the middle. Now when it's through there in the middle, I'm going to go 1 twist, 2 twist, and put the next one in the hole. Now that is the entire technique. It's not hard, is it? Okay, so here we go again. 1 twist, 2 twist, and the next one goes in the hole. You do 3 twists, see what happens? You don't have it nice and even, you have a fat one and a skinny one. So when you count your twists, make sure, I'll unpick it, make sure that you have exactly the same number of twists each time, or otherwise it's just going to look awful. You might like that, you might like having it uneven. For this design I don't. Alright, so I'm going to, now you've got the idea, it's not rocket science, is it? I'm going to turn off the camera and you can have a look at it when I'm finished. And you'll find I've turned my row of dashes into a line. Okay, see you in a moment. So there they are finished. Now if you're a very neat, tidy person, you can cut all these pieces off along here. For me, I'm going to leave them because of that word contrast. I want to have a bit of contrast in length, even if these are all looking the same. They're actually not the same, some of them are bigger than others, so I have left that deliberately from there. But now we'll zoom up onto the big one here and see what we're going to do to them. You can see those series of dashes have now turned into a line. A line is only a series of dots. So, let's hope they don't fall out. We're going to put the first one in to the foam. They don't need to be in wet foam because these will just dry. And when I go down like this, can you see how already we have created, push it in, the most beautiful rhythm. So at this point, when you've got your line, have a muck about with it to see how you like it to look. What I'm going to do is turn it around to face me and go and have a fiddle with it so I get the rhythm that I want with this lovely line I have created here to make it look yummy. Back in a minute. So what I've done, I just had to have that private little moment to have a fiddle. This is a key to modern flower arranging. You've got to go where the plant material wants to take you. You can't say, I've drawn it like that, therefore it will go like that. You have to say, where do you want to go, plant material? Let's follow your path. Now I've used these U-shaped pins to push them in. These are old ones that have been used lots of time, and every time they go into wet floral foam they get a little bit rustier and a little bit browner, and that's magnificent because when you're working with dry floral foam it means there's a lot of friction here and they hold in really, really well. So that's why I use old ones, and I've just poked them between the tatami wiring and pushed them down in so that mechanic is very, very firm. And now you can see the rhythm. It starts up here and it goes around and comes down so that the vase is incorporated into the design. Possibly need a wee bit more height, so I'm going to use one of these lovely heads. You didn't think I was going to waste them with you. At the same time I can talk about space. Space is how much room a piece of plant material takes up. Now you can see with the head of this papyrus, it's an umbrella, it takes up an enormous amount of room, but the space is in your control. At the moment it's looking very, very light, and it's called space going off in all directions, so it's enclosing it all. But watch what happens when I do this to it. Can you see now, besides looking not tidy as if it's just had its hair put in a ponytail, it's taking up less space, but it's also visually heavier. And this is the key with space, which we'll talk about when we do the design specifically for space. We take it away, it's all light and airy. We suddenly enclose the space, it becomes heavier and takes up less room. But in a design like this, it can look quite sculptural. So I'm going to use exactly the same wire as I used for the tatami wiring, and cut a little bit of it and just bind up its ponytail. Really just going round and round and round. So big secret to this one. And there it is. And it's designed to give my design here just a little bit of height going up on this side, quietly poking it through there and giving it some height. Alright, because of the vase is so tall, this has to be a little bit taller than it was as well. And also because it's the same plant material as its own stalks, it's going to work really, really well through there. Going to put a second one, so once again just straight up like this. This papyrus is just beautiful. Take off these little bits at the bottom. This is a very modern design, so we don't want any little tizzy bits on it. Cut a piece of little shiny bling and over we go. I'm going to be looking over my shoulder a wee bit here because I want it to be slightly down further from the other one, just to give us a little bit more interest. Being papyrus, these will last for a long, long time out of water. If you want to put water in, most certainly do so. Alright, it's giving it height. Let's, we've got to have a straight ponytail, don't we? Stand back, have a look, say, how's it looking so far? Do I like it? Do I want to add something else to it? At this stage we have got line material, and I'd like to put in a mess. We've got line, we now want a round part, and in my garden just coming up with the narcissus, we call them paper whites. Now I want to show you something about scale. If I put that there, what's your reaction? Stupid. Why does it look stupid? It's too small, insignificant, doesn't have any power against these other things that are very, very powerful. So we want to increase the power of this piece here, which is going to be my celebration of springness. To increase the power when you've got a busy flower like a narcissus, is you put more of them together into a very, very tight bunch. It's called grouping. So I'm just going to group these, a little bit like a spiral bouquet actually, very, very tightly. Oh, the smell is divine. One day, when you and I are much older and they have smell television, we'll redo this so you can smell them. Alright, so I'm making it tighter. Now let's have a look at it. Putting it there. Can you see how now that bunch has got a lot more power because it is a bigger piece there, it is more in scale with everything else, and the individual little flowers are not nearly now as important as the great mass of the big ones. Now these really have just come out of my garden, so of course, not being straight from the wholesaler, they're going to have all visitors coming out on 6 legs to meet me, plus some that last night's storm decided it would rather enjoy than me and you. So we cut all those pieces off. Now another thing about spring bulbs, this is daffodils of any sort, is they do not like floral foam. If you put them in floral foam, they will die very, very quickly. So you need to put them into a test tube of some sort. The test tube is going to be pushed into foam, that's why I didn't mind it not being wet. And so they will sit here in the test tube happily in their own source of water with no problems whatsoever about not being able to suck it up. If you have a look and see why, they have hollow stems. If you push that into the floral flame, all it's going to do is block up that stem, and when it blocks up that stem, it can't get the water. Whereas if you put it into a flower file, it goes straight inside and goes, oh, thank you Trish, heaps of water, and it's a happy little chappy. Just more on the net. Yeah. Right, attach this second file, the second lot of flowers. The bits that the weather didn't like, and now we're starting to get this lovely sense of balance and proportion as we're going down through. I'm looking at it now and I'm going, what else do I need in it? Obviously I need something just there, this one's got a particularly long hair piece, that one. Let's go for a small one. Isn't it wonderful stuff? Cut it off short. I mean, you could even, if you wanted to get all girly on this, you could even go to a shop and buy hair ties and things to wrap around it and the colour of your design, and that'd be a bit of fun, wouldn't it? so there's my 1, 2, 3. When we get a proportion and we talk about the Fibonacci numbers, we go, I have got one line of the rhythm, I have got 2 bunches of the narcissus, and I have got 3 of the ponytails. And now I'm just really going to clean up my edges. Some leftover geranium from the last design. This is really just so that the floral foam is hidden. Geranium lasts for so long. Pop that in. And it also gives it another contrast without it becoming over fussy for a modern design. Modern designing, you don't have lots and lots of different forms in there. And you know what I think I'll do? I think I'll put a wee bit of glue on there to there and hold it in place to there so the rhythm comes round. So I'll do that and it will be finished. Enjoy! Design is about scale. Scale means how big you are going to make your design, how big the plant material is that you're going to select, how big each piece of plant material is in relation to every other piece of plant material you're going to use. And they all have to work together. There's no point having a huge big flower and lots of tiny, tiny little things around it. It would look stupid. So that's the scale. Now, for the scale today, we're actually going to work in the garden. I'm going to take you out there, but I'm going to show you this technique first, so when we get out there and if there's a bit of noise or whatever, you still know what we're doing. So, being winter, one of the resources we have are potted plants from the nurseries. They're called potted colour in New Zealand, and they're $1.99. And this one is a polyanthus, and they come in all sorts of gorgeous colours, and it's a lovely thing to brighten your garden if you are doing a garden art piece like we are today. For this, you're wanting to get a container that fits, I know it's grubby, it's been in the garden and it's going back in the garden, that fits inside your pot like that, or you can use the pot itself. One of the things you need to look for when you find these old garden pots, another thing about you can recycle, you can go to your nursery if you don't have them and ask them for them. See if you can get ones that have got these holes on the side. It's these holes that are going to secure the little piece of artwork that you're going to do. You're also going to need some very, very stout florist wire. The heaviest gauge you can find. This is all going to go outside, so select things that aren't going to rust, decay, things like that. Very heavy florist's wire. A little bit of decorative wire, believe it or not this is black, and some more of these fancy wires we talked about before. Okay, first thing we're going to do is join 2 pieces of this stout heavy gauge wire together to make them longer. You'd normally do this with parafilm, but I'm going to use sellotape just to show you that you don't need all the fancy gear to do many of these designs. You really can get away with using things that you've got in your house. It's not going to be seen, it's going to be well hidden, and you just go round and round and round, and you just go round and round and round and join the 2 together. You notice I left quite a big overlap there. The reason is if you don't use a big overlap, they come apart. I discovered that to my parent. There you now have a long piece, and depending on the scale of the piece you're doing will depend on how long you're going to make your piece of wire. Right, I'm going to do that 4 times. So, done the 4 of those, you need 4 of them. The container. We've drilled a hole there with the electric drill, just go straight through. You can also use a hot nail. Just put a nail over a candle, but don't hold the end of that nail with your hands, you'll burn yourself. And there's a hole there and there. If you have got one that hasn't got holes, just pop them in. The important thing is to find a container that's got this ridge around it. Very important for later on. It's got this ridge. That one has also got the holes. And then this will be able to go straight into there when we've finished our little bit of art piece. So that's why I've picked them that size. It also means that I can take the polyanthus out and put something else in. The technique is always used for covering up plastic flower files, but this is just a new way of doing it for you. Put the wire through the hole, bring it round and down. All you need to do. Easy as easy. And do that in all 4 places. And bring it round and down. You just make a little hook. Last one, through the hole, and down. And when I grab them at the bottom like this, we have a cone and it's hooked that in place. Alright, to hold the cone in place at this stage, another little piece of sellotape. This sellotape obviously is not going to last in a winter with all the rain and things that we get. It doesn't matter because this is only to get you started. Once you're started, everything will be held in place with wire. So just a tad of sellotape around there. I won't use my teeth this time. And there it is. That is your basic mechanic. You do that you need to do that 4 times if you're going to use the design I'm going to do, which is taking up 4 pots of polyanthus. Right, the next step is your plant material. You saw me, this is Ming Fern, and it's wonderful. It lasts maybe a week out of water, then it starts to drop everything and turns brown. Pick a plant material that when it turns brown is still going to look lovely in your garden, and that way it could last the whole winter. You can then even spray paint it if that's what you'd like to do afterwards. So what else could you use? You could use ivy, you could use lavender, you could use any random shrub at all that you want to prune for the winter. Use the prunings to do this design. Pretty easy now. We're into the next stage. So take a piece of pruning, this one here will do, and we're going to stuff the middle of this. So we're just going to put as much of this in we can, and we're stuffing it up into the middle, just like this. But hard to start. Grab your hand and then you're away. Down it will go, squish it all down and squish it all down, because you want the wire on the inside. Any bits that are wayward, just ping them off there. That's a wayward piece, don't want that. And put the stalk right, ouch, it's got spark there. Okay, and this is where the real wire comes in. I know it looks pretty random right now, but it will be fine, it will be fine. So round we go with the real wire, and all you're doing is disciplining it. Hold the reel wire tight in one hand, and round you go. Round you go. Look at that already. Give it, like anything, give it a firm hand, it will do as it's told. Round and round and round. A lovely little point on the bottom. Round, around, 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 and cut it off. Alright, so that's the beginning of it. And why is the wire in there is so I can actually bend it. This part up here needs now to be filled up. So once again, making sure your reel wire's handy. Some little bits I'll cut off. Use the right tools, it's always good. Round we go. So I'm filling in just a few more. Need about 6 hands at the moment. Every forest got 6 hands, so it doesn't matter, 6 fingers. And once again, round we go with the reel wire. Hold it on your thumb. Round you go. And down, binding it in. Discipline, squish it down. This works, as I said, even rosemary. If you've got a rosemary hedge like I have and it has to be cut every now and again, use the wire to do it. I'm going to cut it off there, and you just bend it back on itself. Find a wee branch, put it down so you can see. Find a wee branch, go under the branch, back on itself, totally disappeared. Okay, so this up here needs a wee bit more work, so I'll cut some more little pieces off, watching out for those spikes all the time. This is why I bought so much in. It's you certainly don't want to run out of your plant material and have to rush outside again when it's that cold. Okay, I'm going to put it back. I'm going to put it this way, up this way this time. I want to completely cover that pot all the way around so you can't see it at all. And off I go again. Okay, you see how slowly it's just covering, everything's covering up on it, which is what we want. So for this last top piece, if it's easier, put your wire in the top and attach it around there. Then around you go. Tucking all those little bits in. This is quite helpful if you weren't born with 3 hands. Make as little dents as you possibly can. Adding more bits as you need to. Keeping that reel wire tight. Picked up a bit of black wire there as I went past. And around we go. That's looking a bit really, really tight. Little piece of stalk there, around I go. So now we're ready for binding it so that it'll all go. I'm changing colour. I'm going to go to yellow. The reason I'm going to yellow is unity. The yellow with the yellow of the centre there, even though I might change this potted colour to something else later on, I might be able to bind another bit of wire on for that colour. So that's why I've picked that yellow. So this is the final one now, once again, through the hole at the top. Round, round, and we're going to go right down to the bottom. Round. This is to bind everything in, tidy it all up. I want it to look like a cornucopia. And out of the top of this lovely cornucopia is this beautiful winter colour. See any little holes like I've just seen there? Just put a little bit more in. The more you bind it, as you notice I'm just going down and down, the more you bind it, the tidier it's going to look, but also as it dries and these stalks start to fall off, they've got nowhere to fall, so they stay into your cone shape, so it will keep being on that lovely brown colour. Go right to the bottom, make yourself a little tuft, and now come right back up the top again. If you've got things that will survive outside for 3 or 4 months, such as beads, little decorations, things that you want, if it's a special occasion, if it's Christmas, you might want to put little Christmas things on it. Put them on. Just as you're deciding what you're going to put on, realise that you don't want to panic every time it rains or something like that, that it's going to destroy them. So always think that this is for outside in all weathers. Look quite nice with snow on it, don't you think? And up we go. Back up to the top. And when you get to the top, secure it again in one of those little holes. Well, when you ultimately see this, again, we'll be putting that inside there, and we've got ourselves a little cornucopia. Now you've got to do that 4 times, so that's the first one done, and we'll come back when I've done the other 3. Okay, that's the 4 of them done. Purposely, not all the same length, want to have a little bit of variety with them, and so that just like contrast, we also want to have a contrast of length. Different lengths look more interesting. Okay, we'll carry on filming outside so you can see where you're destined to put these. See you out there. So now in the garden we're going to talk about scale. Scale is about how big a thing has to be to fit comfortably in the area you've given it to. For example, this polyanthus, if I put it here, it would look too small for the scale of what's available here. So if I put 2 together, suddenly it's more in scale for the size of this frame. And the fact that we're in this great big garden means the frame itself has to be in scale with the size of the garden. The garden itself I'm going to call my flower arrangement. And this little piece of it is going to be my focal area, the part I'm going to see first. I've picked white polyanthus because of their colour. All around you can see the gardens in winter. So everything's in browns and rustic colours, just the bones of the garden. White is a colour that comes forward and you see it first. Only a tiny piece of white will take up your eye immediately. If I'd chosen a darker recessive colour, blues, purples, even a dull red, you wouldn't see it as well. And I want this to be seen immediately, hence the white. Okay, so that's the reason the scale is here. The easel, isn't it wonderful? I'll tell you how it's made. It's just a frame from very old timber. I wanted it rustic to go with this time of the year in the garden. My zipper joints on the end, just glued together. the frame itself, once again very old wood, and on purpose the builder located old things to go with it. So it's got an old bicycle chain all rusty down here and a very, very old hinge at the top. If you want to make it, it's just the A shape plus this one on the back and a hinge at the top. And here's my mechanics. Nails, 1, 2, 3 on that side and 1 on that side. They're flat-headed nails because that's where I'm going to attach the wire to, and the flathead stops the wiring coming off. Pretty easy to get a handyman to make this basically on his saw in just a few minutes with a joint there. And if you're doing this for your garden, once again scale, you decide how big it has to be for your garden. So there it is, that's our basic shape. I'm going to take my first cone. This is why we wanted these little rims around the edge, because I'm going to put the wire underneath that rim right the way around, and that's what's going to hold our cone on shape. Then it's going to go on this side here around the back, and I'm simply going to wind it, the pieces of wire, onto the frame as tight as I can, and there it is, held in place. The first one done. Pretty easy, isn't it? Now my other 3 cones, I'm wanting to come down and around and say hello to this, back to that movement and rhythm. So I'll just change sides. And the second one, around this way. This is why you've got the wire in here, by the way, so you can just quietly bend it to where you want it. See there, by putting it like that, it's saying hello to that one. Start at the bottom. Once again around that rim. And around the nail at the back. The bottom nail. And going up towards that one there. The next one is the top one. Round the wire nail. Hold it tight, and then bend this so it's saying hello to that one. And the final one, which is the shortest one of the lot, we're going to put here to create depth, and right the way around. And there it is done. Bend it. Much more bending, so they're all saying hello to this one here. Very, very quick job now of popping in your plant. As I said before, what's wonderful about this is as the seasons change, you change your plants. These will grow taller. Turn it around so it faces the front. And they will come over the top of those pieces. You don't have to water anything, the rain will do that for you. And there you have the arrangement outside in scale for where it is. The next secret is balance. Balance is about whether when you do this, you're going to fall over or not. Because visual balance is about looking nice and straight. Actual balance is about whether you're going to fall over. And it's the same with your flower arranging. So I'm going to demonstrate it with another technique, an ikebana technique, and that is using what we call a pin holder. It's also known in other parts of the world as a frog, and in Japan it's called a kenzan. Really it is, it's just a series of nails that have been set in lead with a heavy base so that when you put flowers in it they will stay in and won't fall over. This particular container I picked up in Melbourne, and the kenzans, the pin holder, has been glued into there, and on the back is a bowl that has been glued on, and this is a piece of slate. Obviously you're not going to find something like that, especially with that cool little gecko running across it. So any flat dish will do that's got just a little bit on the sides to add the water. So that's what that is. Available at florist hardware's shops, on eBay, go around. Very old fashioned thing. Balance. So that's what we're going to do about balance. I'm going to show you balance as a series of little slides here so that you can see how it was used in English flower arranging, where everything had to be absolutely in balance. One side nice and similar to the other side, so that everything was lovely and calm. Because if something is out of balance, it causes tension. Alright, so back to this. I'll show you what out of balance does. If I put that just like that there and said that was my arrangement done, it's making you feel as if you want to do something else with it. You're worried. Is it going to fall over? Is that it? I could put 2 lemons here, or might fall over by the looks of things. I could put 2 lemons there, and suddenly you're feeling a little bit more relaxed about it, because the 2 lemons have balanced your design. You still be a bit worried about that there. So that's why, if you want your design to be calm and restful, you try to make it balanced. If you're doing a design like this, design like the first one, it was balanced because everything was the same all round. So the first thing we do is cut the end off and push it in to the pin holder. Now I'm purposely going to do this off balance so you can see it, and then we'll change the balance. This is a red hot poker. The only one in my garden that was any good to use. Doesn't matter if you only got one, there's no big deal, because you can add other things to it. And these are the lovely, lovely reeds that grow in my pond. They're native to New Zealand. I have no idea what they're called. But what they do that is absolutely wonderful is they bend. And when they bend, you get the most beautiful enclosed space. Just a pin into the back and it holds it there. Enclosed space, that is now enclosed and it's starting to give the design weight. Compare that with this one. If I shot that right out that way, suddenly the arrangement is now this big. It's taking up all this space. I don't want it to take up a lot of space. I want it to be a small arrangement for a small area of my home. So I'm going to enclose the space again and pin that one down to there. Alright, now I don't want it shooting that far a line. It's so lovely when I can talk to you now about some of these secrets, because I don't want it shooting out that far. It is taking up too much space, so I'm going to cut it there. Alright, now I'm purposely going to do a third one to try and get this out of balance for you. So we're going to put a third one in, just like that. I think that looks rather lovely like that. But is it annoying you? Are you saying that's lovely, but it doesn't feel finished? The reason you might think that, remember we all think differently about design, the reason you might think that is because you're saying it's all on the side. And all I've got is these two tiny little pieces here on this side, so it's making me feel a little uneasy. I want it more symmetrical. So that's when you have these little devices called lemons. Once again, I've picked a lemon that's in scale. It looks right against the red hot poker and looks right against this space. It's not too big, it's not little. If I'd picked a lemon that was only tiny, it would look really silly. Now, I'm going to put that lemon there. What happened? Suddenly we have a balanced design because we've got weight on the side. As soon as you enclose space, it becomes more weighty. So by putting a lemon on this side, it has made it feel more balanced for you, more visually balanced. And then you have to decide, does it need 2 lemons? Maybe 2 lemons has now put the weight too much on this side. What happens if I stack up 3 lemons? Suddenly now the weight's all gone this way visually. You're now looking and saying, this side's very weighty and this side's all light and airy. So you actually can change the balance of your design by just looking at it and being aware. Enclosed spaces like this will create more weight, but so will having something over on that end. I'll just take them off so you can look again and see what difference it makes. Now that is called balance. Sometimes you will want it out of balance because it gives tension, and tension you might be finding is really something you want to do. But that is balance. For me, I'm actually happy with 1 lemon. I know it would seem my husband crazy because he's a symmetrical person and he would say, why only 1? Why haven't you put 2? And he might be happier with that. He's a 2 person really. Okay, so that's your balance lesson, but now I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to do it this time with camellias. Having done that, it's a very good idea, this little design, because it really can be done in 2 minutes flat, just before your visitors arrive, so it's always rather lovely. I'm going to show you another way that balance works. So once again I'm going to take the reeds. This time I'm going to put the reed in the middle. So I'll cut off the top. Sometimes I leave those tops on, they look quite good depending on the design. For this reed I've got to put it right into the pin holder there, and this time I'm going to bend it and bend it and pin it. Always wonderful to have reed like this growing in your garden. You don't use them, many of them, for really very good modern Ikebana style designs that don't take very long. So putting the second piece in, just pushing that reed over the top of the pin and then popping it back in. Creating a series of triangles on purpose, all on one side. What do I mean by one side? If this was the centre of my arrangement, I'm trying to keep them all that way, just to prove to you what it is all about. 3. There's 3 there, but when you look at them there's lots of different triangles amongst that, so that's making it rather a nice and interesting piece of puzzle work almost, I would call that. I think I need just 1 more. Did I cut that straight? Of course not, I'm so used to cutting things on angles. Putting it into the hole. I'll show you what I'm doing so you can't see down there. I'm inserting it over the top of the nail, and that's what's holding it in. So that's over the top of the nail. I want it to go this way, and then I'm going to pin it. Totally all pushing that one way. Now I'm going to prove to you how colour can make something balance. And I'm going to use a camellia. Most people say you cannot use camellias because their heads fall off. This is not in good condition. It's the only one I could find out on the tree. We've had some dreadful storms, so you can see it's got all sorts of marks on it, but this is what you do to make your camellia last. You put a pin through the calyx one way and the other way. This is effectively holding all those petals in, so when they want to fall off, they can't. Alright, now if I place this camellia here, can you see how immediately it has brought weight over to this side? It is starting to balance it. The bigger the camellia, the redder the camellia, the more visual weight it has, and the more it will start to even things up. Now, where you place the camellia can also make a difference. If I place it right in close, it will still feel as if it's not particularly well balanced because it's still pushing that way. The further I place it over this way, the more it's compensating for all those enclosed spaces and balancing it, creating this nice even feel about it. That is balance. Now, I've got these camellias as well. They're not such a dark colour, therefore visually they're not as strong. So perhaps with these camellias I'd have to put 2 or 3 in. I've picked 2 or 3. I'm taking off their leaves. This is a cabana, we like to have it nice and chic. And perhaps if I'm using lesser colours I'd have to put 2 camellias there, because the weight then of the camellias visually is compensating for that. If you think that it needs more, now this is all about you. You're making these decisions as you're designing. I might say I want a 3rd one coming out through here. 1. These would have to go in flower files actually, obviously. 2, 3, and when you go like that you say, now have we got a visual balance, this side all enclosed spaces against this side heavier forms that balance your design. Have a play, find yourself some round forms, some linear forms, and have a play with balance. And you know that means how big something has to be, how big the plant material is going to be inside whatever you've chosen. The next one is proportion. Unfortunately, some people use the two in almost the same way, but you've got to remember, scale is how big, proportion is how many things you're going to use in your flower arrangement. So I've gathered around here a collection of my vases, containers, all sorts of things, so we can have a look at proportion. Once again, how much you're going to use. For this one here, first of all, the long thin one that we used in the first design, how much plant material are you going to use when you're faced with that vase? Now, a really nice, easy way to think is go 1/3, 2/3. So it could be, this container could be 1/3, and then we go twice more up, and that is 2/3. So you would have 2/3 plant material, 1/3 container. Or you could do it the other way around. This could be 2/3, and you could have 1/3 of plant material. This is often used in Europe, particularly in Belgium, where they will have a little dome of carnations, roses, all bunched tightly together as the top third. It works again in this sort of a vase here, which is called a boat vase. With this one, this part could be 2/3, and you could have another third above there where you'd make a beautiful dome-shaped arrangement in the Belgium style. However, if you were doing this in the English style, you would say this is a very, very heavy container. Therefore, you can go very, very tall to balance, there's that word, the weight of this container, which means that you might go way up here if you were doing an English style design to balance that weight. And we can't go 2/3, 1/3 there. We might have to do it this way and say, okay, we're going to take that and that to there. Now when we look at it, that's about right. Alright, so you take your third from this one. Have a look at another container here, which is this tiny little, what was fashionable a year or two again, tin bucket. Once again, you can go, if that was a third, I'm going to do it again and again, and my arrangement's going to be that tall. Or you could turn it up the other way and say that's 2/3 and your arrangement's going to be this tall. What about something like this? Very flat plastic container with a foam in the middle. Very old piece of foam, that one, you wouldn't be using that one. This one, once again, you do it from the sides. 1, 2, and down again. So it could be this high or a little bit more because it's heavy. So it's also about your balance, your visual balance of how tall you have to make it so the container is integrated, not just this great heavy thing at the base of it. This one's a casket tray. Used to be used on coffins for funerals, but become very fashionable for parallel designs. Parallel designs are designs where there's lots of focal areas, lots of growth areas, and they all come up straight like this. All your plant material comes straight up like this. So how tall are you going to make your plant material? On this one, here's your guide again. Up to there, that's 1/3. The other third, you could go that high. So be aware of that lovely proportion of 1/3 and 2/3 as a nice way of knowing how to organise how high your plant material is going to be. Another wonderful proportion you should know is the Fibonacci numbers. Now we've talked about Fibonacci numbers an awful lot in the DVDs, and so I'm going to refer you to the website, which is www.floraldesigntv.com, and there you'll find a free little webinar, and on that webinar it will take you completely through the Fibonacci numbers, and you'll be able to see how the Fibonacci numbers actually work for you knowing how many of anything you're going to use. Just to say, it goes 1, it's a sequence, 1, 3, 5, 8, 13. What does that mean? You use 1 of something, 2 of something, 3 of something, 5 of something, 8 of something, and on up you go. So, I've decided on my vase, and I'm going to see if you've made the same decision as I have. I'm going to do a design for you with proportion based on this beautiful Ligularia leaf. I have them in my garden. They grow fabulously well in our climate, which has got frosts. So it's incredibly hardy, but doesn't it look tropical and exotic even though it's not? Now let's talk now about what you think would be the most appropriate container for that scale, that size. How big? Is it going to be that one, do you think? Is it going to be this one? Is it going to be this one? I think you're going to say no, yeah? Okay, hope you said no. Is it going to be this one? See how it is out of scale, which means that's too big for the container. Now this container, is that in scale? I would say absolutely. It is big enough for the size of that leaf. But I'm not going to use that particular one because I've got one for my design that I think is even better, and it's this one. It's a very heavy container, which means it can take in scale a very heavy leaf. So I'm going to fill this up with water, and then I'll come back and do this design with you. Now that is full of water. It's very, very heavy. Ligularia, The Australians call this tractor seat plant. I think that's the most wonderful name for it. If you've been acquainted with an old style tractor, they did used to have seats like that. And Fibonacci numbers, I'm going to use 2 of them. And just to put one inside the other like that. They're wonderful. You can flick them that way, you can flick them this way, however you want them to be. So, a very heavy container, even more heavy now because it's absolutely full of water, and we have to say, am I going to go 2/3, 1/3, or am I going to go 1/3, 1/3, 1/3? Well, just so the cameraman can't see the top of it, I'm going to go 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, but you do have those choices, recall. And to make that 2/3 at the top, I have used equisetum. Very, very beautiful equisetum called tiger's tail, horse's tail, and it is hollow. If you have a look down there, you'll see it's absolutely and totally hollow inside. This is why I'm not using floral foam with it. It really does love lots of water. It actually grows in our pond in water. If you don't have it in a confined space, it can take over in New Zealand, so lots of advice from me is to keep it in a confined water space. And the other advantage of it being hollow is that you can put wire down through it so you can manipulate it into any shape you want. This wire I've joined together just like I did in the other lesson with sellotape. You can also use parafilm, and these are segments like in bamboo. So I'm just going to push through that segment into the next one, and give it another push, and into the next one, up to there now. This is why it's got to be heavy gauge wire, so that you can go right up through there without it coming out. About here at the moment. This is just going to give me the chance to manipulate this how I want it when I've finished. So there it is with its hidden piece of wire inside. The other ones have already been done. Now that I'm on this side again, you can see how that's going to give me the great height I need to balance the weight of that container there. Way up, I'll go up very much higher than you'll be able to see through the camera at the moment. We'll show you when it's finished. Now the other thing I have got that you saw me coming out of the supermarket with was these beautiful spider chrysanthemums. Supermarket, yes, why? Because there aren't any in my garden at the moment and we don't have a local flower wholesaler. I'm going to talk again about scale. The reason I selected these was because with their petals going out this way, they take up a lot of space, therefore they look bigger than they are. When I put them here, it is now in scale. It's big enough to go with the size of those leaves. The other thing in my garden, I'm lucky enough to have an extremely wide New Zealand flax. If you cannot get something as wide as this in Australia, you'd use Gaimea, which is a very big blade. Put 2 of them together and you'd get the same result. So let's put this together and see proportion. I've started with the 2 leaves. I'm now going to add 2 flax leaves. And they've already been cut at the bottom. They're going in where that hole is there, so that the leaves will actually hold the flax in place. And there it is, it's going right down there into the water. And there goes the second one. And one. Now this one's going to be stapled to the top of this one. A discreet staple which is in line with the stripe on that, and therefore it just disappears, totally disappears. And now here comes the equisetum. And up it goes into the water and right up with the flax. Alright, so when it's into the top there, grab yourself a tiny little pin, preferably with a green head, and pin it in. So now you can see I've put the second piece up and I've pinned it to the other two pieces up the top there. Finally, I have the third piece of equisetum. It's going to go in the same spot there, down so it's in the water. And now I'm going to enclose space. Remember, it's got that wire in it, so it will do as it's told. I can bend it anywhere I want to and it will stay. I can even make a nice circle if I want to. And I'm going to pin that to itself. Can you see how now with that enclosed space there, it's pulled over the design that way. Then we go, fine, we've got it that way, we've now got three, so it's two of the Ligularia, 2 of the flax, 3 of the equisetum. These are Fibonacci proportions. And finally the supermarket flowers. Going to keep the stems fairly long on these because they've got to go into the water a fairly long way, but I am going to group them because I want to have one focal area that you look at. Why did I pick yellow? I picked yellow because of the colour of that vase there. If I put one in, it looks a bit mean, doesn't it? So I'm going to group them like this. Take off the leaves. The reason you take the leaves off is they're not part of your design. Is as soon as the leaves go into water, they make the water go revolting very, very quickly. Okay, so we'll take that one off. So once again, through that hole I left in the Ligularia, push them down in there. And now I have got a big enough point there to make it all in scale. And if you count how many flowers I use, just to say Fibonacci numbers, once again, there is 1 vase, 2 Ligularia leaves, these 2 flax, which become 1 really because I put them together, 3 equisetum, and there are 5 of these spider chrysanthemums all placed together. 1, 1, 2, 3, 5. It's a lovely little secret to remember, especially if you're not sure, if you need to just, does it need 1 more? Don't ask anyone else, look for yourself and use the proportions. Finished. So for the Unity lesson, we're going to start just with the other one finished, but this time the design that I have just done for you is where it was designed to go, because this is what Unity is about. Unity is about everything meshing together beautifully. I have this empty spot in my lounge with the light coming through this window. It's difficult for the camera to pick it up, but in this space the light hits the flowers and it always looks lovely, especially these chrysanthemums. So for me this is a perfect example of Unity. Therefore, Unity for here is the colour of the container goes with the colour of the carpet, the colour of the walls. The height I have decided on goes with the height of the window and the space around it. The glass, the bottom frame here, all go with these colours to make this work in this space. I have picked very big, bold forms, bold, 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 bold forms, so they all go together and are unified. If I had used a rose in this design, it would have had to been a big, fully blown rose, maybe 3, 4, 5 of them with very, very strong colours. Okay, getting it? So let's go and do a design for Unity. This is the remains of a sweet little design that I acquired from a demonstration we were filming last week, or week before I think it was. So it was almost on its last legs. But know, you can always recycle designs. You can always make them all over again just with their bare bones. So the designer, I'm sorry I can't say who it was, started with a white ceramic container, filled it up with floral foam with just a little bit over the edge of it, and put in 2 pieces of bamboo that were painted, spray painted a soft green. A aluminium wire, 2 aluminium wire loops around that side, and some tis from out of the garden, just all plonked there. Out this side, some sticks of some random plant or other, I have no idea what, put into that side. So I've pulled out all the dead plant material and saying, okay, it's a very good lesson on unity. With this pink here, I'm going to say to you, what's going to be best to go with it? Is it going to be that? Or is it going to be that? Alright, I think you probably just answered your own question. Now, colour theory is a completely different subject, which we'll go into another DVD. There are different colour harmonies that work beautifully together. One of the easiest colour harmony to work is where you pick a colour and then use all of its tints, tones and shades to create a design. And if you're a beginner, I'm going to say start with those easy colour harmonies. So I'm going to put aside the supermarket flowers. I don't think they're actually going to go with anything else I've got in my garden. And I will show you what I did get out of my garden. The camellias, which once again I have pinned the back off so that they will last. I also found the very last of a tiny little hydrangea. I found heuchera. These leaves are amazing. You can get them in all sorts of colours these days, and look at the back of that. Incredible. And a little bit of my blueberry bush. It's turned red with the frosts, but it is pretty amazing as a colour, especially there when you go around like that. So I'm saying if I put all these together, I have got unity, because they are all sharing the tints, tones and shades of the same side of the colour wheel, and based on this little piece of aluminium wire. Now this sort of a design here is very, very standard all the way around the world, and it's a fabulous little design for gift work. If you want to give somebody a quick gift, you shoot out your garden and get your stuff. Alright, so now we've got that, let's look at our proportions again, and we'll go 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. But I feel as if, which is about right for that, it's a bit stubby. The reason I feel it's a bit stubby is because of the weight of that container. It's a very heavy looking container. So I'm actually going to make it ever so slightly taller. And by doing that, we'll have a leaner, more balanced look. So that is my line, that lovely piece of blueberry bush. That means I've forfeited some of my blueberries in spring, but oh, the things we do for art. Then into this side here, just push in the heuchera. 1, 2, 3. The reason I'm cutting off the ends, if you're a beginner and you don't know, is so that it will maximise the intake of water for these little leaves in the floral foam. And get it in there. And only little one hydrangea there that's avoided the frost, or it might be because of the frost that it's done that, and I'm going to pop it on that side. And now the camellias, which of course are my focal point. I'm going to take off some of the leaves. Can be a nuisance, and I'm going to put one there. And one there. You notice how I checked first before I cut the stem, because you can't put the stems back on. I checked to see where I wanted it to go. One there, and immediately you can see that leaf's in the way. I'd rather see the camellia than the leaf. And one very short, and then it goes. Once again, look at the leaves and say, don't want that one. And out, cut it out. Stand back and look at it and say, oh, it's off balance. So now you know what balance means. You need to pop that over that side. See what difference that made. Popped it over that side. Now I've got these lovely little leaves that have come off the blueberry at the base. I'm going to show you how to wire a leaf. You just put a little nip in the vein at the back. You put your thumb there so it won't tear the leaf. Come down to the stem, hold it there and go round and round 3 times and cut it off. Now what that has done has given me a little stalk for that leaf. And that way I can just fill up any gaps here at the back with a dry leaf like that, but have them standing up a little bit to give it a little bit more depth. Just in this little piece there. It is very, very worthwhile wiring instead of just hoping they're going to stay in there, because then you can be really secure, and then when you take them along to a sick friend or a hospital or somebody who's having a birthday, you don't have to worry about falling out when you're in the car, or falling out as soon as you give it to them, which can be very embarrassing. And that is a design that shows unity. Everything works together, everything's in scale, it is balanced, and I have some contrast in there. There are the 6 secrets of flower arranging I promised I'd give you.